What's up, everybody? Welcome to, I guess we're calling this Dead Pixels Reviews. I am Brad.
I'm Micah.
And we are here to review Mass Effect Andromeda. We're going to be talking a whole bunch about the game today. We will get into spoilers. We will warn you before we get into spoilers. So if you've, for some reason, not played Mass Effect Andromeda yet, and you think you might, don't worry. We will wave a big flag in front of you before we start talking about anything that would spoil anything for you. But yeah, let's roll right into this. This is going to be your favorite review on the Citadel. So for us, I mean, Micah and myself, probably the biggest Mass Effect fans that I know.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably a fair statement.
Yeah.
So we have pretty high expectations going into this.
Yeah, which probably is not probably. It's very unfair to anything, right? To have super lofty expectations. I was expecting a perfect game.
Oh. I was not expecting a perfect game.
I was expecting a perfect game.
That's funny because I was actually expecting like something more akin to Mass Effect 1, but more polished because they had learned all the lessons.
Right.
And all the pitfalls to miss around. So like I wasn't expecting like this Mass Effect 3 experience where like you're super caring about all the characters and stuff like that yet. Like I kind of expected to get like a Mass Effect 1 vibe from it just with the gameplay. Can we call them antiquities for the first Mass Effect game polished out?
Yeah.
And that I was not expecting a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, I have a bit of a problem.
That's fair. And this is not a perfect game, I would say, by any stretch of the imagination.
It's not a perfect game, but it is a very good game. It's an above average game for me. And it's a game that left me very satisfied.
Well, and see, I think it's a great game. For that reason, with the caveat that my fandom probably predisposes me to liking this for sure.
Right.
And like, so we'll get into all the reasons why and all that stuff later. So let's just talk about the thing that I think is probably the biggest change from other games in the series, and that's the gameplay of this one. It felt like a very different game than any other Mass Effect previously. And look, we're going to compare it to other Mass Effect games, and not entirely on the game's merits by itself. It's just the way it is when it's the fourth game in the series. I think that's a completely fair thing to do.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed everything gameplay wise about this game. I enjoyed the way the action felt. I really liked the power system and the crafting system and stuff like that. That was kind of new to the series. Mm-hmm. And I went into that with a lot of trepidation because I really liked the way that they did the power system before in the Mass Effect games, where you pick your class up front and that kind of limits what you can do. And then they're like, well, it's kind of, in this one, for those that don't know, it's kind of the same thing where it's still biotic tech in combat. But now you can customize during the game completely what you invest points in. So like if you want to dump points into combat skills exclusively, you can do that and have a ton of combat skills that are all maxed out, and you can be like, and you're basically a soldier, like you're the soldier class from the first games. But if you want to spread those out, and if you want to, diversify and do different stuff, so if you want to put a little into combat, put a little into biotics, and do the Vanguard style thing, you can do that too. And the thing that really stood out is the fact that you have 4 presets. So like as you're investing all these skills, you can have like a Vanguard loadout for, when you need to get up close to people, or you can have a tech loadout when you're, fighting at long range, and you can switch between those on the fly. And I thought that system worked amazingly well.
I thought the system was a welcome addition. Mm-hmm. But I found myself just sticking to one preset loadout that I had.
Interesting. Because I switched between, not 4, but I definitely switched between at least 2 and sometimes the third based on certain situations.
I would have to force myself to switch to Vanguard because I don't really play these games as Vanguard. Like, and typical Vanguards, they charge and shotgun, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're very up close and personal. I'm more of a hang back infiltrator style, gameplay. But in situations where combat wasn't the focus, where I wasn't fighting like giant, 2 giant mechs at the same time, then yeah, I would switch it up just to have a little bit of fun. And that was, like I said, it's a welcome addition, but I didn't really take advantage of it, which I guess is just my style of play.
Right.
But yeah, it worked well. It worked very well. I do miss not being able to hold more than 3 powers. Before you would hold maybe 5.
Was it really that many?
Yeah, it was.
Huh.
You could hold 5. I didn't really in the previous games. You could command your squad mates to do certain things.
And yeah, that is one thing that is a little bit of a miss in this one. I don't think I missed as much as some people did.
It wasn't that bad to me. Those two. Whatever. Just don't die.
Yeah.
And if you die, don't die in a location where it's hard for me to get you.
Revive you, right?
Yeah, that's all. I just need you to do your job.
Well, it's funny because I didn't dump a single point into biotic skills at all, but I always had biotics with me, and specifically I used Peavy because she had the pull skill where you could lift them in the air, and that just made for easy combos, easy detonators to fire off. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I like I said, the evolution of the system I think was the right direction to take it.
Oh yeah,
and I'm glad that they did not shy away from that, because I remember when they first announced it's kind of similar but not the same. A lot of people were freaking out a little bit. They're like, what are you doing? Because they didn't. I don't think they did a good job before the game came out of explaining how it worked. Yeah, and then once you got in there, you're like, oh, it basically is the same, except I'm not locked into one choice that I make at the very beginning of the game. Yeah,
which is, it prevents you from having to re-roll another character, and you can see what that stuff is like on the fly. And I did. I respect my character quite a few times to try and find a combination of 3 powers that I enjoyed. And I would switch more than I thought I would. I would switch when you got the remnant. I would call that out, and then I would switch to another power that had overload in it. Right. So I did switch a few times. I guess I really just didn't use the biotic stuff because I'm not a biotic guy.
Which is funny because I think we're in the minority when it comes to that.
We're smarter than most people.
Probably true.
Come on, man.
One thing this game also did, which was a huge break from previous ones, that when you went on a mission in the previous games, you can swap out what weapons you had equipped and stuff like that on the fly. In Andromeda, you actually have to pick your loadout before the mission begins. Yeah, and then you're stuck with that for the entire mission. I didn't mind it at all. Actually, I was fine with it. I think it forced you to kind of it forced you to get comfortable with certain weapons. So if you tried to experiment with something, then you were kind of forced to use that throughout that mission and decide if you really liked it, rather than firing it off 2 clips worth and be like, all right, this piece of shit gun, throw it away. I'm not a big fan.
I don't know. I miss the one of the older Mass Effect games had a firing range so that you can get a feel for what you like. I did miss that, but at the same time, once I unlocked more slots for my loadout, I just picked the weapons that I thought I would want to use. Sometimes I would double up with an assault rifle that shot electricity, and I would have another assault rifle that shot bullets. Right.
Okay. I didn't do that. I was very much one gun type.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because I don't use shotguns in this game.
Interesting.
So there's no point in me carrying.
I lived off the one. I think it's the Valkyrie shotgun or something. The one that basically is 10 rounds, and you can just auto fire, just hold the trigger down, and just like a grenade launcher almost. That thing was fantastic. And we touched on teammates a little bit. I definitely do think that your teammates were the least useful in any Mass Effect game to this point.
Yeah, again, because for me, I would command my team to do certain things, and that's how I would get the use out of them. And with the power system, you don't really need to command them to do anything, because theoretically you can do everything. So they're just kind of there. So they need to be, for me, I kind of need those people to have personalities that I want to, when we got to Kadar, I would take I almost called him Rex. I would take Drac and Veteran, just because they were, my two badass aliens, right? And because that's the vibe that I got. But it didn't really matter who I took because I could do everything. So to your point, they weren't as useful practically, but some of them I enjoyed having around.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I use specific people who had specific powers that I wanted to have at my disposal, but that was pretty much the only thing that informed who I would bring with me.
Yeah.
And plus, because also the big difference in this one too is there's a lot more verticality.
Yeah.
With the levels, and because you have like the jetpack that you can use to float around, and that could be used as a tool in combat. Also, I felt like I could do a lot more in this game than in previous Mass Effect games.
Look, mobility is one of the other. If the first pillar of gameplay was the evolution of the power system, the mobility was the second. Yeah. And the mobility was amazing, especially with this stiff ass game, right? Because I'm used to Shepard lumbering around.
I will say that it did take, like, that first planet that you land on when the game first begins took a little bit of getting used to. This is a game that made a very strange first impression, I guess you could say. Yeah. As far as kind of, because especially if you play the other games, you go in expecting a certain feel, and this game definitely had a very different feel, but only slightly so. Like it's one of those things that, like, when you have a game series and they switch the way a control scheme works, and it just kind of messes with your mind. Yeah. That much more.
Yeah. It took me. I mean, it took me hours. It took me to get to EOS before I could kind of get into it. And that was, and that first habit was a Habitat 7. Yeah. It wasn't, I wasn't feeling it, but I think that's just because, like you said, it was new. Right. I wasn't used to it yet. It did take a while, but I grew to enjoy it very much.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, I really like, so this game took a huge inspiration from Dragon Age Inquisition in terms of, well, I mean, blatantly so. They pretty much ripped the design.
They just reskin it
from the game, especially in terms of how you explore. So previous Mass Effect games, you had like hubs that you could go to, but for the most part, with the exception of Mass Effect 1, where they did give you that open space to explore, for the most part, you were stuck in very limited areas where you could actually explore around and do stuff. And Andromeda changes that completely by having these planets that you can go to, and then within those planets are this pretty wide open space that they give you free reign over. So it's definitely not an open world game per se, right? But it's about as close as you can get without that designation.
It's a map so huge that yes, you do need the Mako 2.0 to traverse. And look, I don't mind that they basically aped Dragon Age Inquisition.
Well, it's because you're Dragon Age.
Right, because I enjoy Dragon Age. But I know a lot of people had a very, very big problem with how this game plays. And I saw articles questioning whether or not Bioware has lost its heart.
Oh, I saw that too. Yeah,
and I didn't get it. Like, I'm trying to understand what these people are seeing and what they're playing. And then I'm like, well, is it because people don't like change, or because it still felt like Mass Effect to me? Right. Even though it played very different from the other Mass Effects, it still felt like this world.
Well, and that's what's funny is that, so Dragon Age was not a game that I loved by any means. Like, I didn't beat it. I got as far as the castle that you get to in Dragon Age. Oh. And then I kind of fell off. But for me, it wasn't. I just felt like the tasks and what you could do in the different areas was way too errandy, and it wasn't like they changed the basic structure on how those tasks worked in Andromeda, but it just felt more. It felt more right, because like you were building up the civilization and the stuff that you were doing made sense as you went along. And I also appreciate the fact that, and I know Dragon Age did this too, these multi-faceted, story quests that you had as you go along, especially the loyalty missions in this game, how they were a little bit more fleshed out than than in Mass Effect 2, where it's like, hey Shepard, I have a favor I need you to go do before we go on the suicide mission.
Right.
I gotta do this one thing. Like there's multi steps, and again, a lot of the steps were just go find these guys and kill these guys and do this thing or do this, that, or the other. But I was more invested in those quest lines just because they kind of were drawn out over a longer period of time.
Also, do you think also it's because of the setting? Like the I'm a sci-fi guy.
Oh, the fact that it's space instead of fantasy? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, that has a little bit to do with it, just because I'm more attuned to that for sure.
Yeah, but like you said, the same type of, like, they were R&D quests, but like you said, it fit the story, and I didn't mind doing them. Like, I know I was reading some people just hated doing, they found it boring, or they found it this and that. I mean, maybe you just weren't into the story enough. I don't know, but it was fine for me. At one point, because the way that I play games is very similar to the way you play games. You see a map with a bunch of question marks all over the place.
Like, all right, I have to go here and do this. I gotta do this.
Right, I gotta do this. Yeah. And at maybe hour 70, I'm like, all right, I kind of want to just push on.
I got there a little bit quicker than you did, but it was definitely in that same kind of vein.
Yeah, sure. Like they make sure that they give you a lot of things to do.
But the thing is, like, you don't have to do them all. Like much like previous Mass Effect games, like you can do just a lot of the stuff and still get like the best possible, like max out all the planets and do this, that, or the other without needing to do every single little. So like I didn't 100% complete the game. I just I think I was at like 80%.
Yeah.
And I left a lot of the missions. I'm like, well, that doesn't really look that interesting, or this isn't important for like I made sure to do all the priority missions and all the side quest missions and stuff like, and all the loyalty missions, but I didn't really worry about
all those additional tasks and stuff like that.
Right.
No,
I mean they'll be there if I really get the hankering to go back and clean those up essentially.
Yeah.
As you go through the game for sure. I gotta say too, and going back to the gameplay, I really did enjoy Mass Effect never really had a crafting system in it that I can recall. The closest that you can get was in Mass Effect 1, where you can, mod out the weapons with different items and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when not in Andromeda, you can literally create new weapons from resources that you acquire and make them unique as well, which I thought was really neat. And I definitely played with that option a little bit.
Absolutely.
As you went along.
Because you can buy these things at stores or vendors, but if you craft it, then you can mod it out, kit it out.
Right, and I rarely bought anything.
Oh, I didn't buy. I didn't buy I didn't buy any weapon or piece of armor. Anything that I bought was just visual upgrades and upgrades for.
Right. Every time I went to a shop, it's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, here's my scrap. Give me money. Thanks.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
As you go along.
Exactly.
Or here's all these mods that I don't need. So.
Right. So I ended up finding one piece of armor that I liked. And I basically liked the look of it, and the bonuses it gave you were pretty cool. It was the Helios space armor, the purple and white one.
Okay.
And I stuck with it because it had this nice little neon tint to it and all that. I was like, that's because I'm superficial. I don't know what to tell you. And but yeah, like the remnant stuff. The remnant stuff that you can craft was awesome.
Oh, really? See, not up my alley.
Oh, really?
At all. Yeah, I'm very much like I stuck with all of the human, like all the Milky Way weapons and armor, because I'm totally boring. Like, even when I got like those Ket weapons, I'm just like, get this shit out of my face. Like, this is terrible. This is awful.
I crafted a cryo gauntlet. You punch people and they turn to ice, and then you can that sets people up for yeah, man. And the remnant weapons are energy based, so you don't run out of ammo.
Yeah, I did craft like a plasma assault rifle, and it just didn't really do it for me.
I crafted that assault rifle, and then I kitted it out so that it shoots lightning. and the lightning would just drain the shields.
Oh, nice.
So I would drain those shields and then set up for a combo with incinerate or concussive shot.
I'll see. Maybe I didn't experiment enough with
like
those different fields. Then
it gets very, very deep when you get to it, when you get into it. Like there's one kept sniper rifle but it shoots like a rocket launcher.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird because you think, okay, let me use this very precise sniper rifle, and all of a sudden, at the end of the scope, you see this big explosion, and it works best kind of like a close range weapon, like when some of the giant mechs or the those huge remnant come by. I would just, when I would run out of one thing, I would pull that out real quick and just fire away because the explosion would do damage to armor. So it can get very, very deep if you mod certain things the right way. Like it's far deeper than what I thought it would be. I thought it would just be, okay, you could just make this weapon now.
Okay, fair enough.
But yeah, I enjoyed it.
I'll tell you what I did find kind of useless was the AVP system at the game, where as you make the planets better, they give you like these small bonuses that you can unlock that are kind of whatever.
They had that exact thing in Dragon Age Inquisition. Like it's so funny.
I mean, if it works, you know what I mean.
Just like Dragon Age Inquisition.
Dragon Age got really good reviews, so I get it.
Yeah,
I get it. So you dived into New Game Plus a little bit. I did not. So
New Game Plus is pretty cool. I started an Insanity playthrough on New Game Plus. So you carry over everything. You carry over all your points, everything that you've dumped points into. You carry over your level, carry over your money, and all of your teammates carry over the abilities that you put them into. So you're essentially just you're souped up. And if you're the type of person that spends a lot of money or wants money, you keep all the money that you have. It's making the Insanity run bearable.
Okay.
Because I started an Insanity run fresh. I said, well, nuts to this. Can't do it, won't do it. Right? Cannot play with them, cannot coach with them, can't do it. And I have my barrier kitted out, and I have armor and everything that allows me that will, once I get to a certain point in health, it will kick in. It will reboost the armor, so it's making my Insanity playthrough bearable, but still challenging.
Okay.
So I'm very curious how I'll fare towards the end of the game when when they just throw the gauntlet at you.
Yeah. Actually, well, we have to wait for that till later in the podcast. Our podcast video. Whatever. Same difference. So let's talk about some of the things that a lot of you watching probably expect to talk about. The supposed bugs and terrible facial animations that plague the game upon release. Which, all right, so I ran into a few bugs. Like I had a few points where the game froze. Normally on the Tempest, so there was no problem to just reload, restarted. There was a couple quests where the video at the end of the quest things got jacked up, and I had to go back to the last checkpoint, which is basically finish this battle. Yeah, essentially do that. But for the most part, it wasn't anything that I didn't expect to see because I've played a Bioware game before. Right, and look, we say that, but that's not an excuse. It's not excusing it, but at the same time, and I get it if people are upset that how could they release the game this way, because they knew they could patch it later. That's the reality that we live in. Right. And when you have hard deadlines set by game publishers, which I'm sure EA told BioWare, hey, this game is going to release on March 21st, whether it's ready or not. That's the reality we live in. I mean, you can say, oh, well, back in the day, NES games always shipped out the door. Yeah, because they had like 8 lines of code and then and then you were done. Like it's a little bit different. Just a little bit. It didn't bother me at all. And the facial animations didn't even, there was so much controversy online about those when that Xbox Live preview came out. It didn't affect me. Some faces were a little weird, and I noticed when the patch came out a couple weeks later that they didn't look as weird. Mm-hmm. But again, it's just okay, that's fine. It's still telling me a story that I'm engaged with, and I'm still having fun with the gameplay. And this stuff just doesn't I guess it depends on your your threshold for those things. Like if that kind of stuff would bother you a lot, then by all means, that might bear some looking into. But it just didn't really affect me in any way, shape, or form. That's just me, though.
I did play the early access on the Xbox, and it was bad. It was bad. I encountered bugs where Ryder, the very beginning when Ryder just thaws out and Ryder is sitting there with their cup of coffee. I encountered a bug where I had a female Ryder at the time, and there was a different default male Ryder. Just literally, like the head was over top of it, like it was some sort of conjoined twin. Like it looked very, very odd. And I'm like, okay, and then there were issues where some quests weren't prompting, and there were issues where the game would just freeze, and then you would have to start over. So that's not a very good first impression.
No.
But I don't know, man. I maybe it's because I really wanted to play this, but I got through it. And like you said, they patched it a couple weeks later, and it was all good. The facial animations, it took a minute to get used to the way this game looked, because it looks different from.
It's not nearly as dark and.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And people's faces aren't angular, and it very much is aping a bit of the Dragon Age Inquisition art style, or even Dragon Age art style, because they started it in Dragon Age 2,
right?
Where it looks slightly more cartoony.
I know what you mean. Bright colors, and
right?
Things of that nature, for sure.
Right, and it took a minute to get used to, but it didn't take that long for me to get used to it. So I don't understand. And then I see people comparing it, to The Witcher. Like that's not a good comparison. Look, you could compare the previous Mass Effect to this Mass Effect. I wouldn't compare it to The Witcher.
My biggest thing is like, I don't remember Skyrim getting this much flack, even though Skyrim is a game with a lot more technical difficulties than this game had. And why doesn't it? Because it's fun as hell. Well, this game was fun as hell to me. Like so I'm willing to forgive a lot of that stuff. Again, if you're someone that needs your game to run absolutely perfect, maybe Bioware games aren't going to be the thing for you.
Because
I mean that's just the breaks. That's just the breaks. You know what I mean? So, multiplayer, real quick. I don't have a lot to say about this because they really just pretty much copy pasted the design from Mass Effect 3, which was a very good multiplayer design. They added more characters that you can use, different races, different abilities. You have a little bit more control over how the characters level up, just like you do in the main campaign, which is neat. And that's all I need. And I didn't play a lot of multiplayer because I was so engrossed with the main story. Right. You played a little bit more than I did, I think.
I played a lot of multiplayer, particularly during the free period, because I didn't want to start the story and then have to stop. And especially because the first couple of hours of that game are rough.
Yes.
And I didn't want to. I was just like,
had to power through it.
Right. I'll just wait till the main game comes till it gets released. Multiplayer is fun. It's repetitive, like all multiplayer games, but there are only a handful of modes. I found myself enjoying multiplayer in Mass Effect 3 a little more. I don't know if it's because of the enemy types. Some of them just aren't as fun to shoot, but the Kett are kind of boring.
Yeah.
But it's serviceable, but I am not playing it as much as I thought I would be playing it.
Okay. Be curious to see if that evolves over the next couple months.
Yeah, we'll see. I have a couple of characters that I use from time to time, and some of the levels, like I appreciate the verticality of the levels, but some of the levels just aren't. I mean, there's maybe one level that I really like playing on.
I get you.
So
we had a couple questions from from our fans, which we'll get to, and then we'll get our final thoughts before we start diving deep into the story. Amir asks, as massive Mass Effect fans, how does this game hold up? Would you say it's on par with the previous series and want sequels, or would you just take this as a standalone story?
I want sequels.
Yeah. I mean, they designed it for sequels, very much so.
Yeah.
I think it holds up. And see, like I said, that's why I went into it kind of thinking, all right, this is Mass Effect 1, but a new Mass Effect 1. Because I wanted to see the jumping off point. Like, if you compare this to 2 or 3, it's not really a fair comparison, because Mass Effect 2 and 3, you had characters that you had already had personal, relationships with through the previous game, and that changes how you look at those games.
Yeah.
A little bit. So I compare it more to Mass Effect 1, and that's what it is. It is a much better, much more evolved version of the first Mass Effect, essentially. And that's all I needed it to be, honestly.
Yeah, it's I want sequels. I'm very satisfied with this game. It's I think it holds up well. I think I think that they could do a little bit of tweaking, but the core mechanic of the game, which is why we play games. People play them for different reasons, but one of the reasons I play games is I want to be able to play a game that feels good, and it feels good. It feels, like you said, like a polished Mass Effect 1 that takes ideas from Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, not necessarily the best ideas, but but it takes them, and it tries to combine them into one stellar game, and it gets the job done, and it's I don't know, it's fun to play, man. I would seriously give it a shot.
Yeah. Daryl asks, should Terrence buy it? I don't know, Terrence. Should you buy it? Terrence is sitting off camera right now while we're doing this.
I'm looking at this video.
Yeah. I think Terrence should buy it. Mike, if you listen to the podcast, and if you don't, what's wrong with you? Mike has been trying to angle Terrence not to buy this game for the past several weeks.
Because you're going to be like, what the fuck is this?
And also, this is an interesting question. If I have the choice of one or the other between this or Horizon Zero Dawn, what should I buy? So it's funny. So both games obviously came out around each other. I actually put down Horizon to play Mass Effect, and for 3 weeks with Mass Effect Andromeda, like, I could not put the controller down. Like, I put 60 hours into the game in 3 weeks' time. I don't do that with games anymore. I just don't, because I was so enthralled with the game, and since Mass Effect, since I've beaten it, I've gone back to Horizon, and I've been playing Horizon, 2 hours here, 2 hours there, but I'm not as engrossed with Horizon. That being said, if you have to choose between one or the other because you only have room for one, 40 to 60 hour epic action role playing game, which I totally get, I'd have to recommend Horizon probably, because I think it's got much broader appeal. Because the reason that I couldn't put Mass Effect down was because of the story, and I was enjoying going through the game, learning more about the galaxy that you were in, which is a brand new galaxy, of course. Learning more about the characters, which, we'll talk more about the characters in a few minutes, but the cast of characters I thought was excellent.
Yeah.
And I wanted to discover more. Horizon's a game that I'm enjoying playing because the game is fun to play.
Yep.
And I really enjoy the gameplay, and I enjoy the stealthing and all that stuff. So unless you think that you're going to be grabbed by the story in Mass Effect, I'd probably actually recommend Horizon if you have to choose. I'd say get them both, because they're both excellent games. But Horizon is, to me, one of the landmark games of this console generation, and I wouldn't necessarily say the same thing about Mass Effect Andromeda.
I would say, like you said, if you want a story that will grab you, play Mass Effect. If you want a game that plays incredibly well, but you can listen to a podcast while playing it like I do, then get Horizon. Like Horizon will be, if you care about the way a game looks, get Horizon. If you care about the way a game makes you feel when you do something while playing it, get Horizon. If you want to lose yourself into a world, particularly if you've never experienced this world before, get Mass Effect.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's a Sophie's choice, but I started a New Game Plus with Mass Effect. I haven't gone back to Horizon yet. So it's Horizon. While I do enjoy Horizon can be very mechanical and it can be very no pun intended, and it can be very, by the numbers. It's like Far Cry in a way. And if the Far Cry gameplay loop is what does it for you, then go ahead and get it. But and look, like you said, they're both great games.
Right.
Like it's a really hard decision because they're very different from one another. So I don't know. Look, me personally, I'm playing Mass Effect again.
Right. And I think that question actually does a really good job for us of summing up kind of our thoughts on the game in general, for sure.
Yeah.
So that is the review. If you do not want spoilers, stop now and save the video somewhere else. And when you're done playing, you can come back and discuss the spoilers with us. So again, spoiler warning, we're about to talk story. If you don't want to hear it, go away. All right. I really dug the story of this game a lot more than I thought I would. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, man. Like, because it's like Star Trek come to fruition, right? Like I'm going and everything you do in this game feels like it has some impact, even if it doesn't, right? Like, remember the first big decision you do in EOS?
Yeah.
What did that do?
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I thought, and this is actually kind of a knock against the game in some ways, but I thought that this game is the Mass Effect game where you see the impact of your decisions the least.
Yeah.
Like when you were making those binary decisions, but this didn't have like a Caden Ashley decision, like a landmark, holy shit.
Right.
Like this is gonna come back and affect things in different ways. However, I have a theory behind that. I'll lay this on you real quick.
All right.
So you know how Mass Effect 2, you had a very different squad than you had in the first game. There's only 2 characters that you could play as from the first game. The Mass Effect 3 was even different still.
Yeah.
I think that in this Andromeda series, you're going to have pretty much the same squad throughout. You might add a person or two, but I think the core 6 are always going to be there. And I think they might be doing some like behind the scenes like calculations to see who you interact with the most, how you the answers that you choose with certain people, so that you build these really strong bonds with all these characters. And then in the third one, they kill the one that you like the most.
God damn it. God damn it. Because that's one thing that I will give this game. They do a very good job of developing relationships. You do a lot of talking. And look, one thing in Mass Effect is romances. You can romance your crew. It takes a while before someone will open up to you. You have to spend time with that person, and normally it's after every big mission you go and talk to somebody and stuff like that. And they have characters where it's like, sex is a part of this universe. And they have characters that are like flippant about sex. Like, sex is just no big deal, right?
Yeah. Like you can literally have sex with PB just like a fling. That doesn't mean anything. Right.
Like, I got to clean the pipes, Phoebe. What's up? And she's like, all right, I'm down. But if you do certain things in the game, PB will develop feelings for you beyond just of a physical nature. And that's cool, man. Like, that's how real relationships develop.
It's funny because it's so funny how this worked, because like immediately as soon as she appeared on the screen, she annoyed the shit out of me.
Oh yeah, I was like,
and then of course that's the character that I ended up romancing.
Right.
At the end of the day, because like there's actually character growth and character arcs that I don't remember seeing in the previous games. Maybe with Garrus, because he was with you for all three, and I guess maybe Tally as well for some people. But with the exception of Vetra, which didn't really do much for me, like I genuinely liked all of the squad mates. Like Drax like my boy, and we go into a bar, get into a bar fight, doing shit like that. Liam, I also found annoying, but his earnestness was hilarious. And it's funny because like during his loyalty mission, like I was like dressing him down, and then I'm just like, and then at the end of it, he's like, "Man, I'm really sorry." I'm like, "It's okay, Liam. Like
fine,
you're
dude.
fine. Like it's all good."
I know your heart was in the right place.
Right.
You're just a fuck up.
I fucking love like the relationship, and like one of the relationships I found most interesting was the relationship between you and Jaal. Because it came from this very like trepidatious place where he was very untrusting. Like you're this new species coming in to this new galaxy, and you do forge this like
you found like a brotherhood. Like you, especially after his loyalty mission, where eventually you meet this guy's family. They do relationships incredibly well in this game, and that's what I love about this series. That's what. That's why I think they're setting you up for the fall, though. Because I think that is by design. Like I really do think that the aim of this trilogy is really going to be to focus in on like the camaraderie between the crew and Ryder, and just like the togetherness in the family, because that's where you get the emotional gravity. Like the reason why Mordin potentially dying at the end, or in the middle of Mass Effect 3, is because you fucking liked Mordin. Like, you loved him.
Was one of the most personable characters in the second game, and then like third game he kind of shows up. And you're like, Mordin, you're back, but you have to die for this thing to happen, or not to happen, depending on when the way that you went about that. But it really spoke to me how they really built up that relationship, and even like the other people on your ship. Like it's not just Joker like it is in the other games. Like you also have your nav pilot that and the engineer and stuff like that in the doctor.
Man, one of the pilots, Suvi, like you get into conversations about faith, like like those are like serious conversations.
I've never played a video game that let me be an atheist and let me do that. That's fucking awesome. Which is cool, fantastic. Man. And like I said, it's so where do you think things go from here? Because obviously, humanity is established now, on Meridian, and you have the different outposts also established. I would assume that those will grow and hopefully flourish over time between this and the second game. I really like your idea, but I hate your idea. I'm just saying
of the idea of family.
How about this? How do you think the Ket are going to factor in to this? Do you think it's gonna be like a Reaper thing where you got to see like the Archon was like sovereign basically, and then so you're like, man, this guy was a badass, but he's the biggest badass, and then like behind him is like an entire troop of badasses? Or do you think that there'll be like a greater threat that will come along?
I think what's that character's name that is in the Stinger? I can't remember his name.
The Primus?
Yes.
Or the Primarch, whatever it was, yeah.
Yeah, I think that much like Mass Effect 1, the Archon was Saren, and Primus will seize this opportunity. I think he's like Starscream, right? Like he'll seize this opportunity to try and reestablish the Ket army. But I have no idea, because I don't want just a retread. Right. I don't want just, okay, now Primus is the new Archon.
Right, and that's I don't think they would go that route. I think
I hope they wouldn't.
More
I hope they wouldn't.
For sure.
I can't think of any other. And the thing I like about this game is that there wasn't some like world looming threat like the Reapers. But hey, we got enough time to do this fetch quest, even though the Reapers are literally overhead, like the sword of Damocles getting ready to fall on us. Like I like the way that how the story presented itself that it was it made sense that I could establish this stuff and that I could do all this other stuff while having to deal with this greater war. I like that, and I want that to continue, but you need something. I feel like you kind of need a big bad, right? I feel like you need a puppet master at the end.
I like the Archon. He was a dick. Like he was your traditional arrogant, villain that thinks, everyone else is beneath him. So surely he will, squash you under the heel of his boot,
right,
without much issue,
right.
I didn't really. What did you think about the final battle? I appreciated that they didn't go the route of making him super powerful and having to fight him one-on-one.
Right.
I think they handled it the right way, but it still felt a little anticlimactic to me in some ways.
It did, but at the same time, like, I don't know how else you could do it without, a giant baby Reaper.
Right. True.
Like, I didn't like that idea. I really enjoyed the idea of everybody that you helped along the way coming to help you at the end.
Right.
Like, that felt good. And I have to imagine that if you didn't do a loyalty mission, that
is the case. Yeah, there's certain people that don't show up if you don't help them, basically.
Okay. I really, like, it made me feel good. It made me feel good going through that gauntlet, because there are two ways to end games nowadays. One big bad boss that you have to fight, or just a massive gauntlet.
Same thing did Mass Effect 3, I guess. So
right.
Kind of makes sense. I mean, after a human Terminator Reaper, I guess it's probably the way to go. Two more questions I want to ask you. Do you think your twin's dying at some point?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's
absolutely. I thought your twin
figured the same thing.
I thought your twin was going to die in this one.
Okay,
because why would they allow you to create this twin? I was waiting for the opportunity to play as the twin, right? Because why would you have them create your twin if not to? I thought your twin was going to play more of a role.
Okay,
I wish
in this game
that was the case.
I mean, yeah, probably next game there'll be a little bit more.
The next game, I really want the two siblings to have to work together.
What if the next game, if they had both of them, like switching, like you do a section with the one and then the other one?
That's what I thought this game was going to be.
Okay.
I thought this game was Scott was going to do one thing, and then while Sarah was doing another thing, and then you just play as both. You switch between missions. That's what I thought. That's what I want, because I want you to develop a bond between the two siblings. So that when one of them dies, and I want you to have to make that decision. Yeah, I want you to have to be able to say,
what if in the second one of these, if you carry a save over, you have to play as the other sibling exclusively? Wouldn't that be interesting?
That would be interesting.
And then in 3 they throw that out there.
Yeah, that would be interesting. But at the same time, I kind of want if they do a mission structure where you play, Scott, Sarah, I want at the end of that one that one of the two of them has to sacrifice himself, and then that's it. Like, you never see that character again, because you don't know you don't know what happened with your mom. And that's another.
You gotta save some stuff for
you gotta
the sequel.
You gotta save some stuff for the sequel. So the second in a trilogy is usually the darker one,
right?
And I want that one to be the dark one, the one that you have to really come to grips with, like, the reality of a situation. And then 3, you just say, fuck it, balls to the wall, let's go.
So the last question: who do you think is the mysterious benefactor?
Man, I have no idea.
Well, because to me, it's got to be someone.
It's got to be someone
from the previous trilogy,
right? That came with you, right?
Not necessarily came with you, but it has to be someone that that the players will be like, aha, you know what I mean? But I don't know who that person could be.
I have no idea who.
It wouldn't be like a complete letdown or make no sense. So, like, that's the only thing worried, is that they're going to build this up, and the reveal is either going to be like someone you don't know, which would not lend any gravity to it whatsoever,
right?
Or someone that you can't make sense of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The only person I can think of is maybe it's the Shadow Broker, and you leave Milky Way before Liara becomes the Shadow Broker.
Yeah.
So in theory, it's probably the other Shadow Broker. I don't know if that decision, like, that would be like a well, duh. You know what I mean?
Right. That wouldn't have the greatest impact, and I mean. And it's also something that only people who have played, like you gotta kind of take into account people who have never played the other ones before. Like they won't know who the Shadow Broker is, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Part of me wants it to be someone that you've met in this game, maybe just in like one of the quests. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Not even necessarily like something as menial as one of the tasks. It can be someone that you've met, in one of the loyalty missions or in one of the main missions, but you have to have done that mission in order to really appreciate who that person is. So I have no idea, man. I have no idea.
I was a little upset that they let that thread so open, though. I was like, I didn't get any resolution on this? All right, fine. So I think we're going to wrap it up here. We could talk about this for another half an hour, but we're not going to keep you guys too long. So thank you very much. Obviously, if you're a fan of our show, this is the first one of these. Certainly not the last one, though. We will be doing several. As we're not going to do this for every single game that comes out. We're only going to do it for the ones that we feel are worth doing. Yeah, essentially. But yeah, this is definitely not the last time you'll see this. Again, don't forget, if you don't listen to the Dense Pixels podcast, you should. That's kind of what we do normally. So, along with Terrence, so make sure that you check that out. If you go to densepixels.com, you can find it there. If you haven't, click that subscribe button down there. Make sure you subscribe to our Dense Pixels YouTube channel so that you can get these videos and any other video features that we do going forward. That's it. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to check out all the other TNP Studios stuff as well. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.